of debts, and through the rights and powers of the people directly under the Second, Ninth, and 10th Amendments in particular. Notice that I do not propose working through the courts, even though at base, money and banking are constitutional issues. And this is simply because the problem of reform is so immense and complex as to be beyond the competence of the contemporary judiciary, even if they wanted to handle it. Congress, of course, has explicit constitutional authority over money, and it should exercise this authority in a constitutional manner. But that is not likely to happen in the foreseeable future for at least two reasons. First, the wrong people have colonized Congress. Almost all of them, with some glorious exceptions, are in the pockets or easily swayed by the propaganda and threats of the bankers and other special interests in high finance. Secondly, most members of Congress reflexively approach monetary and banking reform as they approach any other kind of legislation from the wrong direction. They have been mal-educated and otherwise conditioned to think in terms of top-down organization. But real reform of the monetary and banking systems at this point in time cannot be imposed from the top down because the problem of rational economic calculation raises its head. Socialistic central planning cannot be made to work in the field of money and banking any more than in any other complex area of human endeavor. In fact, the present crisis in the area of money and banking is the proof of that principle, because the Federal Reserve System is actually a central planning socialistic or fascist mechanism, and it's shaking itself to pieces on the basis of the impossibility of such a system actually to calculate rationally. Now, it's true that the Federal Reserve System has no vested right, no constitutional right, no statutory right, no contractual right, no moral right, no political right to continue in existence indefinitely. Congress, showing a certain amount of prescience, even provided in Section 30 of the original Federal Reserve Act of 1913, and I quote, that the right to amend, alter, or repeal this act is hereby expressly reserved. But in practice, the Federal Reserve System and Federal Reserve notes cannot simply be eliminated at one fell swoop, here today, gone tomorrow. What will take the place of Federal Reserve notes is America's common medium of exchange when that tomorrow arrives. In what monetary unit will prices be denominated? What of all those outstanding contracts yet to be fulfilled that have always been understood to be payable in Federal Reserve notes? The only economically rational and non-catastrophic way to transform America's monetary and banking systems is by introducing an alternative, constitutional, and economically sound currency to compete with and gradually supplant Federal Reserve notes. This will provide the free market with the opportunity, the means, and the time to establish a new and economically rational structure of prices for goods and services in this alternative currency, and simultaneously to phase Federal Reserve notes out of use. Now, this could be done right now by individuals acting on their own recognizance. Although Federal Reserve notes are legal tender, no one is required by law to use them as his sole medium of exchange. Rather, everyone is entitled to specify by contract that he will employ only silver and gold, or other currencies for that matter, in such a capacity, to the complete exclusion of Federal Reserve currency and credit. Such so-called gold clauses, and they picked up that name in the late 1800s because gold was the preferred medium for these contracts, are not particularly widespread today because their use incurs information costs, transaction costs, opportunity costs, regulatory costs that very few people are willing to incur, even if they understand that this alternative exists. The states, though, could organize their finances on a silver and gold basis, while minimizing costs because of the very large amounts of money that annually pass through their treasuries. Besides having this economic advantage, the states are also in an especially strong legal position The Constitution directs that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin to tender in payment of debts. In exercise of their reserved sovereignty, the states may use whatever they desire as media of exchange in the performance of their governmental operations. Even the Supreme Court sustained that principle in the late 1800s. And in that choice of media of exchange, the states enjoy complete immunity from intervention by Congress. Well, to this end, several years ago, I drafted a bill, originally for the state of New Hampshire, to bring a state's finances gradually onto a gold basis. And I understand that activists around the country, I think in New Hampshire, Indiana, Oklahoma, and maybe California, are even preparing now to promote variants of this bill in their states' legislatures. Now, interestingly, I saw a few days ago, as quasi-sovereign bodies, the Indian tribes could assert some of the same authority as can the states to choose their own forms of money and banking. And the Lakotas, of Custer's Last Stand fame, seem to be doing so right now, using a privately minted silver coinage. Finally, and perhaps most to the point in this particular discussion, we, the people themselves, through their states, in statutorily revitalized militia of the several states, could make silver and gold the media of exchange for their militia, as an aspect of preparing for economic homeland security. Self-evidently, neither a state nor this country as a whole can erect the complex superstructure of homeland security on anything other than a foundation of a sound and vibrant economy. And no economy can be sound and vibrant without sound money. So, combining a popular movement for sound money with a popular movement for revitalizing the militia will maximize the extent, the strength, and the likelihood of success of both movements. And for that reason, the committees of safety, which are forming throughout the country, to revitalize the militia of the several states, state by state, as Walter Reddy pointed out, are investigating the best ways to restore sound money through the militia. And I would say not a moment too soon, because the crisis is now upon us. It is not of our doing, but its solution must be. Otherwise, we shall be its victims. Indeed, the people now managing and profiting from this crisis intend for us to be its victims. So in their own defense, America's patriots need to throw today's rotten tea, the Federal Reserve System's fiat currency, not only into Boston Harbor, but into every gutter and sewer throughout the United States where it may be found. And to consign the Federal Reserve System to the same well-deserved historical oblivion as now inters the East India Company. Before the Federal Reserve System ultimately destroys this country. So I close with the same admonition uttered by Samuel Adams before the first Boston Tea Party. This meeting can do nothing more to save the country. Patriots must stop simply meeting and talking among themselves, and instead turn out to mobilize and empower tens of millions of their fellow Americans to save this country through effective action, now, before it is too late. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.